Okay, good morning everyone. Today we will mainly talk about trigonometric functions, but I will start with this problem about rational functions. It's very, very important. It contains the definitions of the domain, range, how to speculate the shape. Usually we can't find the range unless you draw your graph, or you can speculate the shape of your function. Of course, all the supporting materials, you'll find them on the TKH platform for the time being, okay? So, do you remember from the yesterday a problem like this one? F of x equal x plus 1 divided by x cubed minus 4 of x. Because I'm not really sure, okay, I'm not really sure if you remember this or not, because I was not here yesterday. So just in case, y equal to x plus 1 divided by x cubed minus a 4 of x. Not all the rational functions, I can speculate the shape of the function or how it's gonna be. I can speculate, I can find the domain. The domain is usually very simple compared to the range. The range, you will be able to get a whole picture about the range if you succeed in imagining or drawing or sketching the main shape of the function. So you can speculate how the range is going to be, okay? So I will start with determining the domain. Any ideas? What should I do? Okay, yes, exactly right. I will start with seeing what's the problem with this function. I have a denominator. So we should control the denominator. How to control the denominator? To find the value of x, let's not oblique the denominator to equal to 0. So simply I will start with number 1, that's x cubed minus 4 of x shouldn't equal to 0. And this way I will execute the values that will make a problem with this function. Okay, starting with this, so we can take x as a common. So we would have x squared minus 4 shouldn't equal to 0 because it's a denominator. So the second step, you have a difference between two squares. So start factorizing, if you remember. So simply it's going to be an x times x minus 2 times x plus 2, and all of them shouldn't equal to 0. So your domain, these values should be excluded from this domain. So simply x shouldn't equal to either 0 or 2 or negative 2. So now I can get the domain. The domain of this function is simply all the values of r, and there is no restriction on the nominator. So it should be r except these values, which are negative 2, 0, and 2. I usually feel more comfortable by arranging them from the smaller number to the greater number, okay? Now I have the domain. But in order to get the range of this function, I have to speculate or to think about how the sketch is gonna be. So how to sketch this function just by knowing the vertical asymptotes, which are the zeros of the denominator. We already have them at the time being. This is actually works well also with the main form that we talked about the day after yesterday. That's y minus b equal k over x minus a. You start by determining the vertical asymptote, the horizontal asymptote. Then you look to the value of k. If it was positive value, so your graph will be within the first and third quartiles. If it was negative, so it's going to be within the second and fourth quartiles. But here, the problem is the denominator is first degree, and the denominator is third degree. So what to do? I usually find this very, very successful. I will start with the x-axis. This is the x-axis. And then I will start putting the points that's forbidden. You shouldn't come near to these vertical asymptotes, which is at negative 2, and then at 0, and at 2. Of course, at 0, you will find one of the very famous vertical asymptotes for this function in specific, which is the y-axis. So this is the y-axis. Then at -2, I will start putting the first asymptote, which is, as you can see, is at -2. You are not allowed to touch this value or to use this value in substitution with this function, because simply you will end up having a division over 0, as you can see. And at +2, exactly like this, I will start by, as I told you, drawing the vertical asymptote. Now, if you look to your domain, you will find regions. Yes? These lines divide your domain into how many regions? 3 of them. Greater than 2, which makes sense. The value in between 2 and 0, that's the second region. And the value between 0 and -2. Then less than -2. All of these are regions. I will start testing each one of them to speculate how it's gonna be. The function is continuous inside these regions. So I will try to use my head a little bit with these substitutions. It's preferable to put y on this form. So y now should be written as x plus 1 divided by x minus 2 and the x plus 2. Am I right? This is the factorization that we did. Okay. Let's start with the right side. I will start getting a value really very close to +2. I will need like 2.1, 2.2. I will make the substitution. I don't have to write it, but my mind is working. Okay? I will use like 2.1. For example, if I use 2.1, the denominator is going to be positive, so I'm not going to bother myself with the value. But let's get to the denominator. So 2.1 here, you will have a positive value. 2.1 here, you will have also a positive value. 2.1 here, so it's a positive value. So all of them will lead to positive value. Am I right? Okay. Let's look to the values. This is the sign. So the function should be in the upper part, because at 2.1 you will have a positive value. Let's see if this value near to the 0 of y or it's very, very large. If I took 2.1 or 2.01, which is something really very close to 2, what's gonna be? I will find that the value of the denominator is gonna be really very close, very small. So if I use 2.1, I will have 4.01. I will have 0.1 here. I will have 2.1 here. So if you multiply them and get the division, you will find a value that's increasing as much as you become near to the vertical asymptote. So this is mainly the value, the values, how it's gonna work beside the vertical asymptote in the positive side. Also, I will try to imagine if I took a very large value, like 1,000 for example. Let's say 1,001, but the denominator will kill it because it's a 1,002 times almost 1,000 times almost 1,000. So you are talking about 9 digits in the denominator. So the value is going to be really very close and it's still positive. So for this side, it's really very simple that the function will approach 0 for this side. So this is for the first region. I will do exactly the same within the middle region, which is between +2 and between 0. Start by taking a number which is really very close to 2. But from the other side, what do you suggest? Let's take 1.9, 1.09, whatever. It's a value less than 2. But don't take like 1 or -1 or something. Try to be really very close. So if I took 1.9, let's find first the sign. 1.9. So 1.9 here, positive. 1.9 here, positive. 1.9 here, negative. And 1.9 here, positive. So the overall sign is going to be negative. The function is obliged to be very near to this vertical asymptote. It's coming like this. But I don't know what's going to happen. I have another vertical asymptote which is at 0. Okay? So let's check a value really very close to 0, which is like 0.1 or something. Once more, let's start making the substitutions. 0.1 in the denominator is a positive value. 0.1 here, negative value. 0.1 here, positive and positive. So the function is forced to be within the negative side. So what do you think? It's going like this. Also at a negative sign of 1. So completing this will make it like that. It has to be like this. Okay? The exact value at this point here, I'm not really sure about the B point. I can get it by more analysis. But for the time being, it will move near to the vertical asymptote. Then it will have to make this change of direction and also go to the other side. Exactly in a similar manner. عيد نفس الكلام تاني. بس هرجع تاني عند مين؟ 0. But from the other side. So what do you suggest? I will choose here minus 0.1. Minus 0.1. And I will start substituting. Minus 0.1 on the denominator is going to be positive. Minus 0.1 here also positive. Minus 0.1 here, it's going to be negative. And the minus 0.1 here is going to be negative. So it's a negative times a negative times positive times positive. Am I right? So the overall result is going to be a positive. So it's coming like this. Okay, let's get back to negative 2 and see what's going to be. Once you go for negative 2, this is going to be a negative value. This is also going to be a negative value. And that one also going to be negative value. So all the values here, okay, I'm sorry, I'm talking about minus 1.9, sorry. So it's a negative times positive. So the result in the denominator is positive. And for the denominator, you will have minus 1.9, شلتوا معايا برضو? Okay, minus 1.9, okay.
It's going to be 0, so it's not right.
I finished the 0. I'm talking here about minus 1.9. All right? So this is going to be minus 1.9, minus 1.9, minus 1.9, minus 1.9. For this value, it's going to be positive. For this value, it's going to be negative. And that one also is negative. So negative times negative is going to be positive value. Times positive, all the denominator is positive, while the denominator is negative. So this value will come to a negative side. So I'm speculating this function is going to be like that for this part. For the lower part or the final region, which starts from negative infinity up to negative 2, exactly in a similar manner. I will try to pick something that's less than negative 2, which is going to be negative 2.1. I will start making the same way like. Negative 2.1, so it's going to be negative. This is going to be a negative 2.1, a negative 2.1. Same way like negative 2.1, negative 2.1. And let's find the values. Negative times negative times negative, which is negative. The denominator is also negative, so the overall value is going to be a positive value. And as much as x decreasing, because it's going to tend to minus 1,000, for example, so you will find the values also is decaying, okay, in a similar manner like the other side. So this is going to be the shape at this side. If you look to this function, it's really very hard to speculate how it's going to be without knowing the simple substitutions that we did. We didn't make a table. Did we make a table? No. But we just only use our brain in just substituting. Just getting the numbers near to the asymptotes. خلي بالك in the points اللي هي negative 2, 0 and 2, this is the explosion points for these functions. This is why this function is undefined. Once you go to exactly at 2, look to the function exactly. See, just greater than 2, the function tends to positive infinity. Just less than 2, the function dies to negative infinity. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying it's like tearing this function. ده بتقطعها. تيجي عند ال 2 دي جزء يا دوبك قبل ال 2 رايح لبوزيتيف انفينيتي، اقل من الاثنين رايح لفين؟ للنيجاتيف انفينيتي. ده بيحصل عند الفيرتيكال اسمبليتود، ده يحصل عند الفيرتيكال اسمبليتود اللي في الوسط، يحصل كمان مره عند النيجاتيف عند الاسمبليتود اللي بعده. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, now can you tell me about the range? What's gonna be the range? The range. What's gonna be? The domain now is known. R except negative 2, 0, and 2. For the range.
والرينج هيبقى نيجاتيف انفينيتي ونيجاتيف 2.
Yes. Y belongs to what? Y. لأن أنت في السايد ده زي ما زميلك قال from 0 up to infinity. But for this period, which is between negative 2 and 0, all the y-axis is covered. So it's going to be y belongs to R for the whole domain. Okay? Is it one-to-one? Is it injective? No.
Doctor.
Why it's not injective? How? Because simply if you make a horizontal line, it will cut the graph of this function in more than 1 point. اتفضل.
بس دكتور مش احنا المفروض نقول ان الدومين الرينج سوري ار ماينس نيجاتيف 2
لا
ما عشان نيجاتيف 2
really
دول الاسيمتوت.
just dead and second. The asymptotes are going to be excluded from the domain. But from the range أنا ببص على الواي اكس. هل في مكان في الواي اكس مش covered؟ لا كله covered. أنت عليك تعبان ولا حاجة؟ حسيتك تعبان؟
تعبان سنه بس هو مشكله هو بس فكره ان انا بني ادم درجه حراره جسمي عاليه طبيعي، فلما بخش جوه في الفصول بهمت شويه عشان في الشتاء بتبقى قافلين كل حاجه ومفيش فنتليشن والدنيا بتبقى حر قوي.
فاهم بس انت دلوقتي كويس.
انا كويس
طيب لو في اي حاجه go to the clinic. طبعا خلي بالك from negative infinity to positive infinity زي ما انا قلت لك على طول it's not a one-to-one function, it's not injective, and it's irreversible. All of this you can speculate without thinking about the numbers left and right, trying to approach. That's an introduction also for the limit, for the tomorrow's lesson. Okay. تعال بص انا عملت نفس السيكونس بس unfortunately I have a lot of glare, so I'm not really sure. Let me try to just turn off the lights for. Okay, I believe this is going to be better. I'm not really sure, but we will try it. Okay, if you remark, I have x plus 1 by x squared minus 4, so it's exactly the same. We will make this factorization. So the domain is going to be R except 0, 2, and negative 2. For the range, it is better to draw your function first before speculating the value of the range, especially if it was simple to speculate. You have the denominator which is first degree, the denominator which is second degree. So exactly this is describing how the steps is going on and determining the points, the vertical asymptotes, all what we did here. So this is the shape of our function. It's starting from here up to infinity. This is how it's gonna be. This peak or maximum point, local maximum point, will happen at positive 1. This is the middle part, which go from the positive, it will reach at negative 1 and then will die. And also at negative 2, you will have the same shape. I believe I put more than one example on these functions. This is one of them. As I told you, once you draw it, you will be able to get the range. The range is running from negative infinity to positive infinity. And it's not a one-to-one function, it's not an injective function. Unless, of course, you restrict the domain. So I can say, to be injective for this function, it will be sufficient for me to use the domain, which is when x is greater than 2. Or when x is between 2 and positive 1. Or between 1 and 0. Or between 0 and the negative 2. Okay, it's going to be irreversible also. Or let them negative 2. For negative 1? Negative 1 and 1. For here you mean? You will have a singularity point, but it can be reversible also. but I'm talking about the regions excluding the value of the singularity. This is another example, which I believe it's very, very simple. I'm not going to solve it. It's already solved in your PDF, so it's very, very easy. Which is for f of x equal 4 of x divided by, I will start analyzing this function, factorizing the denominator, which is going to be 3x plus 1 times 2x minus 5. Also in a similar manner, I will get the vertical asymptotes, I will put them, I will start substituting between these numbers, so it's going to be really very simple. Okay, so once you do it, it's going to be exactly the same. This is the shape of this function, exactly like the previous one. I want to talk a little bit about the domain of this function. How to get the domain of this function. Okay, go.
معلش انا اسف يسترداي كنت بسأل دكتور اسلام لو كل الحاجات اللي هو كان بيقولها لنا كده كانت في PDF ولا لا، كان حاجات وحاجات، فهل احنا نركز على اللي علينا اللي هو
الPDF هو المين.
احنا عندنا شوية تروما في الحوار ده.
لا،
اللي على PDF هو اللي علينا صح؟
الPDF موجود فيه كل الداتا، وانا لما هخرج هاكد على النقطه دي. ولو في حاجه اتقالت امبارح ما هيش موجوده في الPDF I will be sure about it tomorrow. Okay. هو بس المشكله this is why I usually keep the lectures recorded for you just in case if you want to review something or you can get back to it. Okay. طيب انا دلوقتي عندي a square root of 4x minus 3 divided by x squared minus 4. What's your suggestions? What should we do? There is two regulations on the domain. So I can say that the first that should be in mind is 4 of x minus 3 should be greater than or equal to 0, which is gonna get to that's 4 of x greater than or equal to 3, and then I will have an x which is equal to greater than or equal to a 3 over 4. So this is the first one, or this is the first condition. I have another condition which is related to the denominator. The denominator states that x squared minus 4 shouldn't equal to 0, which is gonna lead to either by factorizing, okay, or by getting the value of this the value of x. So x shouldn't equal to positive or negative. Now let's start to look to the x-axis. This is gonna be the x-axis. Here we go. That's the x-axis, and that's the y-axis. Okay. The first domain states that we will start from 3 over 4. So the first point is gonna be starting from 3 over 4. So for these two values, first of all, negative 2 is not within your domain. The one that should be excluded from this domain is positive 2. So I will come to positive 2, and this is gonna be your vertical asymptote. Exactly, this is the vertical asymptote. So the domain overall for the time being, the domain is gonna be x belongs to starting from 3 over 4 and tends to infinity, but except at the value of 2. So your domain will run from 3 over 4 up to infinity for the positive side, but excluding from it positive 2. Yes?
جبناها منين؟ لما خدت النومينيتور وحطيت له كونديشن. خلي بالك
ان لو انا عندي مثلا ده عشان ده سكوير روت، لكن انت واخد بالك طبعا ان ده لو كيوبيك روت you will have no problem with it. Yes? If you have an odd root. Yes?
لا بس
معايا؟
ثانية عشان مش فاهم الحتة دي وكنت عايز اسأل فيها اصلا بس نسيت تماما.
اوكي اللي هو
احنا عندنا سكوير روت، عندنا الرول بتاعته.
السكوير روت
ايوه
لازم الفاليوز under the root must be a positive value. So it has to be greater than or equal to 0. This is not just only about the square root, it's about the square for even roots in general.
So يعني اي حاجة even root ليها
Yes. Like the second, fourth, sixes, eights, whatever.
اي حاجة odd انا باخدها زي ما هي.
مش هتفرق معاك. بيقبل بوزيتيف ونيجاتيف.
دكتور طيب
ثانية واحدة.
لا ما عنديش سؤال.
خلاص انت كده؟
حضرتك جبت عليا تمام. ما ده
طب
باجي-
قول لي انت بقى يا مهند.
فوق في الروت، واحنا اي روت في سواء فوق او تحت احنا لازم نعملها اكبر من او اصغر من هي greater than
ما
or
هو
equal.
ده السؤال اللي هو قاله. لو فوق greater than or equal to 0 بس لو تحت لازم يبقى greater than 0 because you are forbidden from dividing over 0.
طب انت نعملها greater than بس او انت نعملها greater than or equal.
تاني you are not listening. On the denominator عندك مشكلة ان الدينومينيتور يبقى بزيرو؟ في مشكلة ان الدينومينيتور يبقى بزيرو؟ لا. لان الزيرو اتس نمبر، بس انت عندك مشكلة ان الدينومينيتور هو اللي يبقى بكام؟
زيرو. ما ينفعش تبقى حاجه مثلا 4 over 0.
يبقى اذا لو انا عندي مثلا whatever over root of an x minus let's do 4x plus 4x. I will do it the same way. 4 or same numbers 4x minus 3. مهاب انت معايا؟ هنا بقى لما اجي اكتب الحرف هجاوبه
greater than بس.
هنا بقى لازم اكتب 4 of x minus 3 must be greater than كام؟ 0 because you are forbidden from the equal sign. You read what I'm saying?
هي ما ينفعش تبقى equal.
ايه؟
وهي ما ينفعش تبقى equal اصلا.
طبعا لانك ايكوال معناها ان انت تقدر تعمل ان الدينومينيتور ينفع يبقى بزيرو. اخلص كلامي بعدين اوصل. انا شفت خلاص. اوكي يا مهاب؟ يبقى اذا لو انا عندي سكوير روت okay square it's like the even roots. It's an example for an even root. So if you have an even root on the denominator the condition will be what's inside this root should be greater than or equal to 0 because you are allowed to use 0 on the denominator. But if it was on the denominator, you are not allowed to use it. Okay? Simple and clear. لو اللي انت matching مع اللي انا بقوله it's okay.
هو بس يعني زي طريقه اطول عشان كده متلخبط. هو احنا كان بيتقال لنا اللي هو اعمل 4x minus 3 is greater than or equal to 0 وبعديها طلع الشرط بتاعه، بعديها طلع الشرط بتاع square root of 4x minus 3 does not equal 0 وكده انت بقى معاك 2 digits. بس هو حضرتك عملتها في equation واحده لان تحت ما ينفعش يبقى 0 احنا عملناها
خلاص بس هو نفس المعنى انت فاهم.
اه بس
خلاص يعني اوكي. لا انا بجيب الكونديشنز اللي بتخلي شباب الدومين it's like the statement that make this function work, that makes this function give you something meaningful. You will consider the conditions either on the denominator or the denominator. من الاخر فكره الدومين هي انا دايما ببصها كده، هي عباره عن الشروط اللي تخليك تقدر تستخدم الفانكشن بتاعتك. زي ايه مثلا؟ زي مثلا اقول لك ايه؟ والله اللابتوب اللي انت بتشحنه في الكهرباء ده لازم اولا يبقى التشارجر 110 ده واحد، ده لازم ترسبكت عشان يشتغل. وما ينفعش تشحنه اندر ووتر. ولازم تعمل كام كونديشن؟ 2 كونديشنز. بوزو عشان تقدر الفانكشنز دي تشتغل. ممكن يبقى فيه more than one condition. Actually, this is the most practical case in all application, in engineering applications in general. انت بتحط conditions و you have to respect them. Okay.
ممكن يبقى في بروبلم زي ده تلاقيها
اه زي اللي فاتوا. ما اللي فاتوا كان فيهم condition واحد ان النومينيتور
نفس الشكل
اللي هو ايه؟
اللي هو
مش فاهم.
نفس الشكل اللي
هو
هو
ده اسم يعني حاجه اوفر حاجه. هو قصده
مش فاهم.
قصده يعني ينفع
راشونال يعني.
يعني حاجه اوفر
ما هو اللي ورا كانت راشونال وكان فيها كونديشن واحد denominator. اوكي؟ وكان في وممكن يبقى في اكزامبلز. المهم بس طب خليني ما ننطش من حاجه لحاجه. لغايه دلوقتي انت بتهيألي فاهم صح؟ واضحه يعني.
بس كان في حاجه
بس انا بقى دلوقتي عايز ارسم.
هو انا بالنسبه لي اصعب حاجه هو موضوع الجرافس
ان هو ايه؟
انا الجرافس اصلا انا بفهم الجرافس، بس هي الفكره في الفيرتيكال اسيمبتوت ده بحسه
حبيبي الفيرتيكال اسيمبتوت مش معقد ولا معقد؟
معقد.
حبيبي الفيرتيكال اسيمبتوت دينومينيتور ايكوال تو 0. البوينتس اللي بتخلي الدينومينيتور يبقى بيساوي 0 دي اسمها فيرتيكال اسيمبتوت.
اوكي بس انا
بالنسبه للراشونال فانكشن انا مش شايف فيه تعقيد.
انا بتكلم عن الرسم مش بتكلم اصلا عن الفانكشن
اصلا الرسم خلي بالك يا مهاب اللي بيتكلم ورا. لا انا عايز اتكلم معاك. لما اخلص اعمل اللي انت عايزه.
اوكي، او اسالني حتى بعد ما اخلص، ماشي؟ مهم. الفكره بتاعت السبستيتيوشنز ان انت تبقى فري ومور كومفورتبل انك تعمل سبستيتيوشنز نير النمبرز اللي فيها مشكله، اوكي؟ بعقلك بدماغك. You don't have to write it down. You don't have to use your calculator. تعال نعملهم سوا. مين النقطة اللي عندها؟ معلش خليني اخلص الاول وبعدين مين النقطة اللي عندها مشكلة؟ مين النقطة اللي فيها مشكلة لغاية دلوقتي؟ 2 صح؟ خليك معايا مهم كده. أنا هاجي عند النقطة اللي فيها مشكلة which is 2. خلاص أنا دلوقتي فهمت إنه once you come near to the vertical similitude, the function it has to do this. It will never cut it because if it cut it, it means you use a substitution. So it will go beside it, either tending to positive infinity or tending to negative infinity. So let's use a number which is close to positive 2. مثلا 2 positive 1, 2 positive 2.001, 2.01. Okay? Number really very close. But before starting this, I would recommend that you make your function like this. Y equal a root of a 4 of x minus 3, and by defactorizing x, this is minus 2 and this is plus 2. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's use 2.01. Okay, once more. 2.01 minus 2 is gonna be a positive value, and it is 0.1. And here you have 2.1 plus 2, which is 4.01. So the result, the sign from the denominator is positive value. Let's go for the denominator. The denominator also will be a positive value. So a positive divided by a positive, the result will be positive value. So since it is positive value, the function must be really very close to the vertical similitude. لو انت عايز تشوف الفاليو ليه فوق قوي، اختار فوق 2.01 واعملها سبستيتيوشن بالكالكليتر، هتلاقي الرقم اللي طالع لك رقم كبير. كل ما تقرب من ال2 كل ما الفاليو اوفرول هتطلع ايه؟ كبيره. in a similar manner. تعال بقى ناخد number away from 2، بعيد عن 2 بس within this side. What do you suppose? 100, 10, 100, whatever. A larger number. Once you start with a larger number, you will find that the denominator will give you a positive value, but it will be small because you have a square root. While for the denominator, you will have a huge value because it's going to be a 100 minus 2, a 100 plus 2, so you are talking about 4 digits or something. Where the denominator is just only 1 digit. So that means your function will die within the positive value like this. So probably this is what's going to happen. Okay, for the other period, which starts from 3/4 till 2, let's try. If I use the 3/4, let's make the substitution. The denominator will have no issues with 3/4. ملوش أي مشكلة مع 3/4. So if you put 3/4 on the denominator, you will end up having 0. So this function, the function here, will equal to 0. طبعا تاني once more اختار رقم في القريب من النقطة اللي بتضايقك. بس from this side 1.9. صح؟ تعال نعمل substitution. 1.9 minus 2 is gonna be negative value. 1.9 plus 2 is going to be positive value. So the denominator is negative. While the denominator is still positive. Positive over negative, the overall value will be. So the function must go like this. هذا شكل الفانكشن. هل لها مكان تحت 3/4؟ في حاجة هنا؟
لا.
ليه مش في حاجة هنا؟ لأنك you are not allowed to use values less than 3/4. range بكام؟ لأن الرينج أنا ببص فيه على مين؟ على الواي اكسس. هنا في في فاليو، في رسم، معنى في رسم يعني في بوينتس، يعني في واي فاليوز. كل ده كفرد ان ذا واي اكس، كل ده كفرد له فاليوز في الواي اكس لغايه لما توصل عند زيرو كفرد. اول ما تطلع فوق الزيرو برضه كفرد.
لذلك هتلاقي الفاليو اتفضل.
بس في المفروض يبقى في فرق بين الزيرو اكسدات مكمله كده مش اللي على اليمين.
الجزء اللي الشمال قفله، لان الجزء اللي موجود على ايدك الشمال عند 3 او 4 قيمه الفاليو بتاعت الواي بصفر، صح ولا ايه؟
قصدي بقى من مثلا 0.1 مفيش حاجه.
ليه؟ مين قال لك كده؟ خلي بالك انا لما بتكلم على الرينج خلي بالك قوي من النقطه دي. بص يا مهاب، الرينج معناه الفاليوز بتاعت الواي. بصوا، ما هو كل دي بوينتس، كل يعني الرسم ده مش خط كده وخلاص، لا خلينا نتكلم عشان تفهم. بص دي كلها بوينتس، شايف؟ بوينتس جنب بعضها، دي كلها بوينتس. معنى انها بوينتس يعني لها واي فاليو ولها اكس مين؟ فاليو. الواي فاليو لذلك المكان اللي فيه رسم لازم فيه دومين ورينج.
لا انا قصدي
يبقى ما انا بكلمك بس انت برضه قافل دماغك، انا ببص على مين؟ على الواي. فبص ده الجناح اللي تحت، شايف؟ كل ده متغطي، كل ده متغطي، كل ده متغطي. هاجي عند الواي اللي هو بيساوي كام؟ زيرو. الفاليو بتاعته هنا عند الفانكشن دي كفرد، لان القيمه دي الواي بتاعها بكام؟ بزيرو. اول ما اجي اطلع هنا انت شايف ان في هنا حته، صح؟
ايوه مثلا.
لا الحته دي بتموت، لان الرسم ده طول ما انا ماشي في الاتجاه ده بيابروتش زيرو، يعني بيقرب لزيرو، بيقرب له جدا، بس مش هيلمسه الا في الانفينيتي. فاهمني؟ يعني هتلاقي قيم للواي 0.00000 10 to the power of negative 100 هتلاقي values. You understand what I'm saying؟ بس الزيرو الاكزاكت you will never touch it.
هو كده الرينج هيبقى انفينيتي.
لا يا حبيبي، متغطي منين؟ من الجناح الاولاني اللي كفرنج النقطه بتاعت الزيرو. يعني دي مغطيه الزيرو، بس اكبر انا بتكلم على الزيرو بتاع الواي، ده عند الزيرو بتاع الواي له فاليو في الواي. ده مجرد ما تطلع سنه كده القيم بتاعت الفانكشن او الجناح اللي فوق مكفر مين؟ الواي. لذلك الرينج كله على بعضه هو الواي اكس، كله ريال نمبرز، اول ريال نمبرز. فاهمني؟ يعني مفيش جاب. اللي انا بحاول اوضحه لك ان الحته اللي انت شايفها دي الجزء الصغير ده مش عامل جاب. ليه؟ لان ده انه ابروتشنج الفاليو اوف زيرو بالنسبه للواي. يعني قاعده القيم بتاعته هتصغر تصغر تصغر تصغر، تتقرب 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 لغايه لما هتوصل يكاد يكون زيرو، almost زيرو. يعني 0 times 10 to the power of negative infinity. Almost zero. You understand what I'm saying? بس الزيرو by the meaning of zero مش covered in this part. بس covered فين؟ في ده. عارف